Section 2.1 introduces a few different things. The first thing is frequency, and frequency is just a count of how many things that you have. Relative frequency, you take the total and you take each of those counts, divide that by the total, and it gives you the relative frequency. Very often we'll write those as decimals. Sometimes you write them as percentages, or they're sometimes written as fractions. Now, cumulative frequency is the total frequency up to a certain measurement, and they can be used when you have some sort of natural order of the things that you're counting. Sometimes the natural order would be like you put the most frequent one first, the second most frequent one second, third most frequent one third, and so on. And then there's one other definition here, which is a combination of both of them, the relative cumulative frequency. You take the cumulative frequency and you divide by the total frequency to get the relative cumulative frequency. Whenever you see this, the relative word, think divide by the total number. And whenever you see cumulative, it's that frequency up until a specific point. Okay, so here is an example. Very often people would just do this using a calculator. So I'm going to do that first, and then I'll show you how to do this on Excel as well. The relative frequency requires us to get our total frequency. So we have to add all of these numbers together. This is number of stars are over here, but we're looking at the frequency. This column here, we want to get that total frequency. 32 plus 12 plus 35 plus 59 plus 123 gives me a total of 261. And then for each of these, we do 32 divided by 261. And take that in the calculator. I get 0.1226. Just round it to 4 decimal places. And then the same thing for the other ones. 12 divided by 261. And so on. Okay, so those are the relative frequencies. You can write these like this one would be 12.26%. This would be 4.598%, 13.41%, 22.61%, 47.13%. Rating as a percentage, just multiplying by 100. Cumulative frequency is a little bit different. The first one is just the 32. The next one is 32 plus 12, or 44. Adding these two together. The next one, adding on that 35, goes up to 79. Add all three of these together. And 38. All of those. And then the last one, 261, just like we got before. Okay, now relative cumulative frequency, instead of taking the frequency, we're taking the cumulative frequency. So this first one is exactly the same. But the other ones, we're using the other number. Okay, yeah, so those are the different types of frequencies that we'll be looking at in this class. The relative frequency is one of the most important ones. That one's a pretty common one. We'll eventually call the relative frequency proportion, and we'll do a lot of calculations with that. So I want to show you this in Excel as well, and just to get you a little bit more familiar with the tools that we have in Excel. So let me launch that. And just going to type the numbers here. Okay. And label these as well. And we'll do relative frequency. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is find the total frequency here. I'm just going to label it. And to add them all together, you can use a function called sum. So SUM, then left parentheses. And the things that you want to add together, you just select them. I'm selecting B2 through B6. Close the parentheses. Press enter. Gives me a total of 261. Make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so now with the relative frequency, I'll put an equal sign and click this one, and then / and I type 261. You could also do an absolute cell reference, which is a different way to do this. I'm just going to type this number here though, and then click and drag this down. When we did this click and drag, the bottom right corner, this is called the fill handle. Turns into a skinnier black plus sign, and you just click and drag that down, and it'll copy that formula with the relative reference, like B2 divided by 261. Here, this one is taking that relative reference, the B3 divided by 261, and so on. Okay, so here, for cumulative frequency, the first one, we're just going to type 32. We're just taking this first one. But now for the ones below it, we can actually take the sum of this one here, B3. I'm just going to do the plus sign in between of them, equals B3 plus the one right above it, which is D2. Then press enter. And then we'll use that fill handle the same way. Click and drag this down. Gives us the cumulative frequency here. Okay, the last one, equals, I'll do a cell reference to this one here. / is division, doing that by 261. And I want to use that formula for the rest of these cells here. So use the fill handle in the bottom right corner. Click and drag down. Gives us those relative cumulative frequencies. So totally fine to do it by hand. It may save a little bit of time if you use Excel to do it, but totally fine to do it by hand as well. Okay. So let me take us back to talk a little bit about using the Excel files. Yeah, so I called them Excel file calculators. These are the things that are pre-programmed for you. If you're interested in learning how the programming was done, let me know. I can send you information about it. But for this class, we're going to more think of them like calculators, as in you're going to use the calculator, but you may not necessarily know exactly how the calculator is programmed itself. We'll talk about the formulas in the background, but as far as programming the Excel files yourself, I don't need you to do that. It's not a programming class, it's a statistics class. So I put usually instructions sheets for those. And the general rule, this is the important thing on this one. General rule with these is that you only change the cells that are gray highlighted. That's a really important thing to remember as you're using the Excel file calculators. If you change anything that's not highlighted gray, those cells that are not highlighted gray, the file may not work correctly because it's pre-programmed those ones that are not highlighted gray. If you end up changing those cells, you can always just re-download the Excel file and then it will work correctly. But yeah, just be careful with that. I'll show you an example of that in just a minute. So here's our first Excel file. We're going to call it our counter Excel file. And very often data is not processed to have like nice frequencies, and we can use technology to make this easier. The counter Excel file is the file that we'll use to count things in this class. So I have the instructions here. Place the data in column A. Column B is optional and most often will be left blank. If the data comes with counts for categories, you can use this column. In column E, then we have to put the categories themselves. And once these are provided, the file counts the occurrence and calculates the relative frequencies and a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, don't change anything that's not in the gray cells. And then if something's not counted, it will highlight it red. This is a tool I use. I actually use this one more often than most of the files. There's always things that can count, and it takes a lot of time to count things if you don't use technology. So a very helpful tool. So to demonstrate using this one, I have just a quick example here. It says you collected data asking which first generation starter Pokemon was the participant's favorite, and the data is there. So a bunch of Squirtles, Bulbasaurs, and Charmanders are there, and we want to count this data. Now there's not so much that it wouldn't be feasible to count this data ourselves by hand, but imagine if we had 500 data points. That would take a very long time, and we may also make mistakes. So it's a good idea to use technology in a situation like this. So just to show you where these files live, you go to Content in our course, and then go to Excel files. Here, this is the first one, counter. Click on that one, and I'm going to download it here. And then once I have it downloaded, this is what it looks like. So the data's over here. Data categories over here. This one is blank. And let me just zoom in a little bit. It's easier to see. oh, just to show you, just for example, the first example we did, and oh, to get rid of things, highlight them and then press delete. Don't press the backspace button if you're on a PC. Make sure you press the delete button. So highlight those, press delete. You can also, if you want to, if you don't like using the delete button, highlight them and then in the home tab, there's a clear all. Just clear contents is usually good enough. But going back to that first example, we had like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars, and then we also had the frequencies themselves. 59, 23 over here. You just have to retype 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So it counts those for us. Does the relative frequency over here as a fraction. It doesn't have cumulative frequency or relative cumulative frequency, but it does have those, the relative frequency itself. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this. Highlight, press delete, not the backspace. And I believe, let me just double check. I have this data here. There it is, download. Okay. Oh, I didn't even have to type that other one. So we're on this one. Down here, change the sheet. You can change the sheet and you'll see the other ones. Example 2, we have the squirrel. This is the data. So I'm going to copy and paste. Hopefully we're getting pretty good with that. Copy and paste that into here. I'm going to paste values. It doesn't really matter if you don't. Now, I'll type the word Squirtle. Oop, make sure you spell it right. Bulbasaur and Charmander. You see, as I type those, they're turning from red to gray. It's saying it's actually counting them. And once we have those in there, we can see the frequency, relative frequency. There, does those calculations for us. And this would be considered like here. This is our frequency table. It does those calculations pretty quickly. I want to show you on the homework as well, because the data is not always obvious exactly where to get it. So I'm going to open the homework and go through a quick example. Yeah, so here's one. So here it's giving us a bunch of blood types, the O's, B's, AB's, and so on. And they want relative frequency here. To copy data, there's usually this symbol here. It has open in StatCrunch, open or copy to clipboard, or open in Excel. I usually just like opening in Excel. It's a little bit easier to copy. So we see it here, and there's 50 different ones. So I'm going to highlight that data. Or you can hold Shift to copy that. Control C or Command C. I'm going to go back to my counter and paste that in here. looks good. Got all the data there. Now I just got to change these categories. O, B, A, B, A. And, oh, it's in a different order. So A, B, B, O. Let me just change that. There we go. Now this will fit. So the relative frequency is what we're looking for. So 0.34, 0.1. 0.12, what was the last one? 0.44. Yeah, and then there's another question. Which one's the most common? 44% is the highest among those, so O is the most common. Least common, 10%, AB. Good. Okay, so what is this last one? Use the results of the sample to conjecture the percentage of the population that has type O blood. Is this an example of descriptive or inferential statistics? Since we're going from the sample to the population, this would be inferential. And what is it, type O, 44%? Yeah, so if you're going from the sample and then describing the population, that's inferential. If you were to contact a local hospital and ask for the percentage of, why might it differ? Yeah, so this one. C, it's the sample may be different from the population. That always occurs. That's that natural sampling error.